Good evening, and welcome to Footnotes Folly. I am Professor Reginald St. John Pemberton, and tonight we take up the oldest manual on conflict still in print, The Art of War, set down by the Chinese general Sun Tzu some 2,500 years ago. 13 short chapters that have since been pressed into service by emperors, dictators, football coaches, and a truly alarming number of men in business suits. We give it to you complete, in plain modern English, from Lionel Giles' grand old public domain translation. The rendering and the asides are my own. This is part 1, the doctrine. And do notice the first surprise. Sun Tzu opens not with courage, but with arithmetic. Before a single sword is drawn there are 5 factors to weigh and 7 questions to ask, and the battle, he insists, is already won or lost in the quiet of the general's tent. Everyone can recite all warfare is based on deception. Far fewer have noticed that the line which actually matters is the dull one about doing the sums beforehand. We begin, as he does, with accounting.
Sun Tzu said, "The art of war is of vital importance to the state. It is a matter of life and death, the road either to safety or to ruin, and so on no account can it be neglected. It is governed by 5 constant factors, all of which must be weighed when you plan a war. The first is the moral law, the second heaven, the third earth, the fourth the commander, the 5th method and discipline. The moral law is what brings the people into harmony with their ruler, so that they will follow him into any danger, undismayed by the risk of death. Heaven means night and day, cold and heat, the turning of the seasons. Earth means distances great and small, danger and safety, open ground and narrow passes, the chances of life and death. The commander stands for the virtues of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness. By method and discipline are meant the organizing of the army, the chain of command, the keeping of supply roads open, and the control of military spending. Every general has heard of these 5. The one who masters them wins, and the one who does not loses. So when you lay your plans, compare the 2 sides by asking, which ruler has the moral law on his side? Which general has the greater ability? Which side has the advantages of heaven and earth? On which side is discipline more strictly enforced? Which army is the stronger? Whose officers and men are the better trained? And in which camp are rewards and punishments handed out more consistently? By these 7 questions, I can predict who will win and who will lose. The general who listens to my counsel and acts on it will conquer, keep him. The one who ignores it will be defeated, dismiss him. And once you have weighed the profitable course, make the most of every helpful circumstance, beyond the ordinary rules, adapting your plans as the situation shifts to your advantage. All warfare is based on deception. So when you are able to attack, you must seem unable. When using your forces, you must seem inactive. When you are near, you must make the enemy believe you are far away, and when far away that you are near. Hold out baits to lure him, feign disorder, and crush him. If he is secure at all points, be ready for him. If he is the stronger, evade him. If your opponent has a quick temper, provoke him, pretend to be weak so that he grows arrogant. If he is taking his ease, give him no rest. If his forces are united, force them apart. Attack him where he is unprepared, and appear where you are not expected. These are the strategist's keys to victory, and they cannot be settled in advance, they must be improvised in the moment. It comes to this: the general who wins a battle has made many calculations beforehand, in the quiet of his tent. The one who loses has made but few. Many calculations lead to victory and few to defeat, and how much worse are no calculations at all. By attending to this one point I can see in advance who is likely to win and who to lose. Sun Tzu said, "When you take the field with 1,000 swift chariots, as many heavy ones, and 100,000 armored soldiers, with provisions enough to march them 1,000 miles, then the cost at home and at the front, the entertaining of envoys, the small items like glue and paint, the upkeep of chariots and armor will come to a great fortune every day. That is the price of raising an army of 100,000 men. When you actually fight, if victory is long in coming, the men's weapons grow dull and their enthusiasm is dampened. Lay siege to a town, and you exhaust your strength. Keep an army too long in the field, and the state's resources will not bear the strain. Once your weapons are dull, your ardor cooled, your strength spent, and your treasure gone, rival rulers will rise to take advantage of your weakness, and then no man, however wise, will be able to mend what follows. So although we have heard of foolish haste in war, cleverness has never been seen joined to long delays. There is no instance of a country ever having profited from a prolonged war. Only the one who understands the full, disastrous cost of war can understand the profitable way to wage it. The skillful soldier does not raise a second levy, nor load his supply wagons more than twice. He brings his war material from home, but feeds his army on the enemy, and so has food enough for all his needs. Poverty in an army comes from having to haul provisions great distances, carry supplies far, and the people at home are made poor. Near where an army camps, prices rise. High prices drain the people's wealth, and when their wealth is drained, they are crushed by heavy taxes. So a wise general makes a point of feeding off the enemy. 1 cartload of the enemy's provisions is worth 20 hauled from home, and 1 measure of his fodder worth 20 of your own. Now to kill the enemy, our men must be roused to anger, and to make it worth their while to beat him, they must be rewarded. So in chariot fighting, when more than 10 chariots are taken, reward the soldier who took the first. Swap the enemy's banners for your own, mix the captured chariots in with yours, and use them. Treat the captured soldiers well and care for them. This is called using the conquered foe to increase your own strength. In war, then, let your great object be a swift victory, never a long campaign. For the leader of armies is the arbiter of the people's fate, the man on whom it depends whether the nation shall know peace or peril. Sun Tzu said, "In the practical art of war, the best thing of all is to take the enemy's country whole and intact. To shatter and destroy it is a worse outcome. So too it is better to capture an entire army than to destroy it, better to take a regiment, a company, or a single squad whole than to cut it to pieces. Therefore the truest excellence is not to win 100 victories in 100 battles. The supreme excellence is to break the enemy's resistance without fighting at all. So the highest form of generalship is to thwart the enemy's plans. The next best is to break up his alliances. The next, to attack his army in the field. And the very worst policy is to besiege walled cities. Do that only when there is no other choice. The preparations alone, the mantlets, the shelters, the siege engines take 3 months, the earthworks heaped against the walls 3 months more. And the impatient general who flings his men swarming up the walls like ants will lose 1/3 of them and still not take the town. Such is the ruin that siege work brings. The skillful leader, by contrast, subdues the enemy's troops without any fighting, captures their cities without laying siege, and overthrows their kingdom without long campaigns in the field. With his forces whole he disputes the mastery of the entire land, and so, his men unworn and his triumph complete, he wins without losing a single man. This is the method of attacking by stratagem. Here, then, is the rule in war. If your forces are 10 to the enemy's 1, surround him. If 5 to 1, attack him. If twice as numerous, split your army in 2. If evenly matched, you may offer battle. If slightly weaker, you must be able to slip away. And if quite unequal in every way, you must be able to flee, for though a small force may fight stubbornly, it will in the end be captured by the larger one. Now the general is the bulwark of the state. If the bulwark is complete at every point, the state will be strong. If it is defective, the state will be weak. There are 3 ways in which a ruler can bring misfortune on his own army. First, by ordering an advance or a retreat when the army cannot obey. This is called hobbling the army. Second, by trying to govern the army as he governs his kingdom, ignorant of the conditions the soldiers face. This bewilders the officers. Third, by meddling in command appointments out of ignorance of strategy. This destroys the soldiers' confidence. And once the army is confused and distrustful, trouble comes from the rival princes, and we have simply thrown our victory away. So there are 5 essentials for victory. He wins who knows when to fight and when not to fight. He wins who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces. He wins whose whole army is animated by the same spirit through all its ranks. He wins who, having prepared himself, waits to catch the enemy unprepared. And he wins who is a capable general and a sovereign who does not interfere. Hence the saying, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory you will also suffer a defeat. And if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will lose every single battle. Sun Tzu said, "The good fighters of old first put themselves beyond the possibility of defeat, and then waited for the chance to defeat the enemy." To be safe from defeat lies in our own hands. The chance to defeat the enemy lies with the enemy himself. So the good fighter is able to make himself impossible to beat, but cannot be certain the enemy will give him the opening to win. Hence the saying, one may know how to win, and yet not be able to do it. Security against defeat is a matter of defending. The power to win comes by attacking. Stand on the defensive when your strength is not enough. Attack only when you have strength to spare. The general skilled in defense hides in the most secret recesses of the earth. The one skilled in attack flashes down as if from the topmost heights of heaven. So one way he keeps himself safe, and the other way he wins a total victory. To foresee a victory that any ordinary man could foresee is no true excellence, and to win your battles and have the whole world call it excellent is no excellence either. Lifting an autumn hair is no sign of great strength. Seeing the sun and moon is no sign of sharp sight. Hearing thunder is no sign of a quick ear. What the ancients called a clever fighter is one who not only wins, but wins with ease. And because he wins with ease, his victories bring him neither a name for wisdom nor credit for courage, for he wins by making no mistakes, and making no mistakes is what guarantees the win, since it means he is defeating an enemy who is already beaten. So the skillful fighter puts himself into a position where defeat is impossible, and never misses the moment to beat his enemy. In war, then, the victor wins first and goes to battle afterwards, while the loser goes to battle first and only then looks for victory. The able commander cultivates the moral law and holds strictly to method and discipline, and so it lies in his own power to control the outcome. In matters of method there are 5 steps. First, the measurement of space. From measurement comes the estimation of quantities. From quantities, calculation. From calculation, the balancing of chances, and from that balance, the victory. A victorious army set against a defeated one is like a full ton weight against a single grain. The rush of such a conquering force is like the bursting of pent-up waters down into a 1,000-foot chasm. So much for tactical dispositions. Sun Tzu said, "The control of a large force is the same in principle as the control of a few men. It is merely a question of dividing their numbers and giving signals." Fighting with a large army under your command is no different from fighting with a small one. It is a matter of arranging the signs and signals, the banners and flags by day, the gongs and drums by night. To make your whole army able to withstand the enemy's onset without ever being defeated, you must understand the use of the direct and the indirect methods, the ordinary force that engages, and the extraordinary one that wins. That your army may strike like a grindstone dashed against an egg, you must understand the science of weak points and strong. In all fighting, the direct method is used to join battle, but the indirect is needed to secure the victory. To the commanders skilled in the indirect, the resources are as endless as the heavens and the earth, as inexhaustible as the great rivers, ending and beginning again like the sun and moon, dying away and returning like the four seasons. There are not more than 5 musical notes, yet their combinations make more melodies than can ever be heard. Not more than 5 primary colors, yet in combination they yield more hues than can ever be seen. Not more than 5 basic tastes, yet they blend into more flavors than can ever be tasted. In battle there are only the direct and the indirect, yet the two together give rise to an endless series of maneuvers, for they lead into each other in turn, like a moving circle that has no beginning and no end. Who could ever exhaust their possibilities? The onrush of torrent water that rolls boulders along its course, that is the force of momentum. The strike of a falcon that shatters the body of its prey in a single instant, that is timing. So the good fighter is terrible in his onset and precise in his timing. His energy is like a crossbow drawn taut, his decision like the release of the trigger. Amid all the turmoil and tumult of battle there may seem to be disorder, and yet no real disorder. The formation may look confused, and yet the army is beyond defeat. Apparent disorder is born of perfect discipline. The show of fear is born of courage. The appearance of weakness is born of strength. That order can mask disorder is a question of organization. That courage can mask fear depends on the hidden energy beneath. That strength can wear the mask of weakness is a matter of formation. So the clever commander who wishes to keep the enemy on the move sets up deceptive appearances, and the enemy obeys them. He dangles a bait, and the enemy takes it, and while the enemy is thus kept busy, he waits for him with his full strength. The skillful fighter looks to the effect of combined energy, and does not demand too much from any single man. He picks the right men, and then lets the momentum do the work. When he uses combined energy, his fighting men become like rolling logs and stones, for it is the nature of a log or a stone to lie still on level ground, and to move on a slope, to stop if it is square, and to roll if it is round. So the energy developed by good fighting men is like the momentum of a round boulder rolled down a mountain, 1,000 feet high. So much for the question of energy. Sun Tzu said, "Whoever reaches the battlefield first and waits for the enemy will be fresh for the fight. Whoever arrives late and has to hurry into battle will come to it worn out." So the clever fighter imposes his will on the enemy, and never allows the enemy's will to be imposed on him. He can make the enemy come to him of his own accord by offering some advantage, or stop him from coming by inflicting harm. So if the enemy is at ease, he can wear him out. If well fed, he can starve him. If settled, he can force him to move. Appear at the points the enemy must hurry to defend. March swiftly to the places where you are not expected. An army may march great distances without distress if it marches through country where the enemy is not. You can be sure of taking what you attack if you attack only what is undefended, and sure of holding what you defend if you defend only what cannot be attacked. So that general is skilled in attack whose opponent does not know what to defend, and skilled in defense whose opponent does not know what to attack. O divine art of subtlety and secrecy! Through you we learn to be invisible, through you inaudible, and so we hold the enemy's fate in our hands. You may advance and be utterly irresistible if you make for the enemy's weak points. You may retreat and be safe from pursuit if your movements are quicker than his. So if I wish to fight, I can force the enemy to engage even though he shelters behind a high rampart and a deep ditch. I have only to attack some other place that he is obliged to relieve. And if I do not wish to fight, I can keep him from engaging even with nothing more than a line scratched on the ground. I have only to throw something odd and unaccountable in his way. By making the enemy show himself while we ourselves remain unseen, we keep our forces concentrated while his must be divided. We are a single united body, while he is split into fragments, so we can bring our whole strength against a part of his, and be the many against as few. And if the enemy cannot know where we mean to attack, he must prepare in a great many places at once, and the more places he prepares, the weaker he becomes at each. For he who strengthens his front will weaken his rear. He who strengthens his rear will weaken his front. He who reinforces his left will weaken his right, and reinforcing his right will weaken his left. To be strong everywhere is to be weak everywhere, for numerical weakness comes from having to prepare against attacks from every side, and numerical strength comes from forcing the enemy to make just such preparations against us. Know the place and the day of the coming battle, and you may march 1,000 miles to meet it, but not knowing them, your left wing will be unable to help your right, and your front unable to help your rear. How much less can the far parts of an army help one another across great distances? So I say, victory can be made. Even if the enemy is the more numerous, we may stop him from fighting. Scheme so as to discover his plans and the likelihood of their success. Provoke him and learn the principle of his activity and his rest. Force him to reveal himself, and so find out his vulnerable spots. Carefully compare your army with his, so you may know where his strength is abundant and where it is lacking. The highest pitch you can reach in disposing your forces is to leave no shape at all to be seen, for then you are safe from the prying of the subtlest spies and the schemes of the wisest brains. The victory itself is shaped out of the enemy's own movements, and yet the crowd cannot see how it was done. They see the tactics by which I conquer, but not the strategy out of which the victory grew. So do not repeat the tactics that won you one battle, but let your methods be shaped by the infinite variety of circumstances. Military tactics are like water. As water in its natural course runs away from high ground and hurries downward, so in war avoid what is strong and strike at what is weak. As water shapes its course according to the ground over which it flows, so the soldier shapes his victory in relation to the enemy he faces. As water keeps no constant shape, so in war there are no constant conditions. The one who can change his tactics to match his opponent, and so contrive to win, may be called a heaven-born captain. The 5 elements are not always equally dominant. The 4 seasons give way to one another in turn. Some days are long and some short, and the moon waxes and wanes. So it is with war. Sun Tzu said, "In war the general receives his commands from the sovereign, gathers his army, and blends his forces into a harmonious whole before he pitches his camp facing the enemy. After that comes the hardest task of all tactical maneuvering. Its difficulty is to make the long roundabout road into the short one, and to turn misfortune into gain. So you may take a winding route and draw the enemy off with a bait, and though you set out after him, still arrive before him. This is to understand the art of turning the devious into the direct. Now maneuvering with a whole army is dangerous, maneuvering with an undisciplined mob fatal. For if you set a fully equipped army marching to snatch some advantage, you will most likely be too late, and if you send a flying column to get there in time, you must sacrifice its baggage and stores. So if you order your men to roll up their armor and press on day and night without halting, covering twice the usual distance for a prize 100 miles off, the leaders of all 3 divisions will fall into the enemy's hands. The strong men will be in front, the worn out will straggle behind, and only 1/10 of the army will arrive. March 50 miles to outmaneuver the enemy, and you will lose the commander of your front, and only half your force will reach the goal. March 30 and 2/3 will arrive. Remember then that an army without its baggage train is lost, without its provisions lost, without its bases of supply lost. We cannot enter into firm alliances until we know our neighbor's designs. We are not fit to lead an army on the march until we are familiar with the country, its mountains and forests, its pitfalls and marshes. And we cannot turn natural advantages to account unless we make use of local guides. So in war, practice dissimulation and you will succeed. Move only when there is a real advantage to be gained, and decide whether to concentrate or to divide your forces according to the circumstances. Let your speed be that of the wind and your order that of the forest. In raiding and plundering be like fire. In standing your ground be immovable as a mountain, be as hard to know as the dark, and when you strike, fall like a thunderbolt. When you plunder the countryside, divide the spoils among your men. When you take new territory, parcel out the profit. Weigh the situation before you make any move. The one who has learned the art of turning the devious into the direct will be victorious, such is the art of maneuvering. The Book of Army Management says, "On the field of battle the spoken word does not carry far enough, and so we have gongs and drums. Ordinary objects cannot be seen clearly enough, and so we have banners and flags." Gongs and drums, banners and flags, are the means by which the ears and eyes of the whole host may be focused on one single point. The army being thus welded into one united body, the brave cannot advance alone, nor the cowardly retreat alone. This is the art of handling great masses of men. So in night, fighting make much use of torches and drums, and in day, fighting of banners and flags, the better to work upon the ears and eyes of your soldiers. Now a whole army may be robbed of its spirit, and its commander-in-chief of his presence of mind. In the morning a soldier's spirit is keenest, by noon it has begun to flag, and by evening his mind is bent only on returning to camp. So the wise general avoids the enemy when his spirit is keen, and attacks him when it is sluggish and his men are homesick. This is the art of studying moods. Disciplined and calm, to await the appearance of disorder and uproar amongst the enemy. This is the art of retaining self-possession. To be near the goal while the enemy is still far from it, to wait at ease while he toils and struggles, to be well fed while he is famished. This is the art of husbanding one's strength. To refrain from intercepting an enemy whose banners are in perfect order, and from attacking an army drawn up in calm and confident array. This is the art of studying circumstances. It is a military axiom not to advance uphill against the enemy, nor to oppose him when he comes downhill. Do not pursue an enemy who only pretends to flee, nor attack soldiers whose temper is keen. Do not swallow the bait offered by the enemy, and do not interfere with an army that is returning home. When you surround an army, leave one outlet free, and do not press a desperate foe too hard. Such is the art of warfare.
And there we pause halfway through the doctrine. We have learned that the supreme excellence is to break the enemy's resistance without fighting at all, that the wise general finishes quickly and feeds off his enemy, that the good fighter first makes himself impossible to beat and then simply waits, and that tactics, in the end, should be shaped like water, taking the form of whatever ground they run across. Next time, in Part 2, we leave the high doctrine for the muddy field, the variation of tactics and the 5 fatal faults of a general, the reading of dust and birds and the tone of an envoy, the 6 kinds of terrain and the 9 kinds of ground, the attack by fire, and, at the very last, the chapter Sun Tzu plainly thought was the most important of all, and which is not about armies at all, but about spies. Mind the footnotes, and beware the folly.